Fallout Season 2, Episode 2 had a ton of Easter eggs within, but it was also one of the most revealing episodes so far when it comes to this show's plot going forward. I mean, even in just the credits, we could see Caesar saying hi and an interesting Go Wasp poster. Cazadors are mutated wasps and one of the most iconic creatures of New Vegas. I think this is a tease that someone's going to be encountering a Cazador soon in the desert, but a lot of the most revealing stuff is thanks to some of the TV spots and even some of the posters for the Fallout TV show. Some of the stuff is pretty spoiler heavy, so I'll cover some of the really heavy speculation later in this video. But either way, I think one of the biggest reveals of Fallout Season 2 is going to end up being who Hank is really talking to. Right now, Hank is in this big Vault-Tec HQ working on mind control for someone. In Episode 1, it's revealed that this wasn't actually Vault-Tec, as instead, Hank appears to be working for some mysterious other party, and even in Episode 2, we could see him experimenting on members of Vault-Tec. But in this exchange, we get a big clue as to who Hank is really working for.
I noticed on your file that you had a family, but you only bought a ticket for one.
It was expensive.
You can't put a price on family, Steve. We were very clear about that in the advertisements. Family is the first building block of civilization.
Hank's focus on family really stood out to me. At first, you assume he's just talking about his daughter Lucy, but do you remember Welcome Home? To go alongside Season 1, Prime Video dropped these little videos hosted by Bud Askins, basically walking you through becoming a Vault-Tec manager. Welcome Home was the video introducing Vault-Tec HQ. This showed off a building that looks very similar to the one Hank's in right now, but it was broken down as a family. Daddy is the Vault-Tec CEO and board of directors, while Mommy is a large language model, basically AI, and Brother Thomas is the office intercom. This very closely parallels Vault Zero from Fallout Tactics. Fallout Tactics is considered partially canon, so some stuff from that game is canon and some stuff isn't. Vault Zero in that game is the Vault-Tec HQ, and at its center is Calculator, a supercomputer that interfaces with brains of the smartest in the country to oversee all of the Vault experiments in real time. And I think this has to be relevant here. I think who Hank is truly working for is somehow the Vault's large language model that we saw in the Welcome Home video. This will likely be introduced as some kind of AI overseeing all of these Vault experiments. And it makes sense. With mind control, the AI supercomputer could literally have minions doing their bidding. Although this doesn't fit perfectly, there has to be something more going on here. Hank is seemingly speaking to a man from Vegas, as he does say he is back in his old stomping ground. So perhaps someone else like House or even Yes Man is also involved here, but I think it's pretty clear that this short video will be relevant somehow. After all, it's pretty likely that whoever is running all of this, whoever Hank is talking to, is the person who also decided to nuke Shady Sands. Although in Episode 2, Shady Sands itself also saw a major retcon, as it now appears to be built out of a pre-war city. It looks like they took over some old buildings of a town that they just moved into. In Fallout 1 and 2, Shady Sands is meant to be that early game post-war town, but like it's a genuine post-war town. It's a town that just didn't exist before the bombs drop, and the entire point is, this is showcasing that society can actually establish and build itself back up even in this post-apocalyptic world. Shady Sands was literally built in the middle of a desert thanks to a Gek. Conversely, in the Fallout TV show, it's pretty clear that this was an existing town that the NCR just took over. But this does kind of make sense for what they're trying to show here. In Season 2 of the show, they're trying to convey that the NCR is grasping on to these old world ideals that simply don't exist much in the wasteland anymore. And of course, in this episode, we see why they don't exist, the destruction, the war that constantly plagues them. That's to say that the town's purpose here, compared to the older games, is different. They're showcasing a different status of the NCR, and I think that's the real reason for the retcon. All of this is likely going to be a big motivator for where Maximus' storyline goes as we uncover who truly nuked Shady Sands. And it'll likely tie in to Maximus' ongoing internal conflict with the Brotherhood's ideals. Episode 2 also sees Lucy making several mistakes. It certainly seems like she got herself into deep water by walking into this Legion camp, but she also likely got this girl killed. Choosing to give this Legion girl a Stimpak instead of just giving it to the ghoul was a major mess up, and the TV show I think even teases this. As Lucy eventually arrives at the Legion camp, you see her afraid, and she mentions how there are obvious cultural differences here.
I realize we all have our cultural differences, but just so you know, I am nice.
Well, Lucy was right, because in Fallout New Vegas, the Legion doesn't use chems like Stimpaks, viewing them as a crutch only to help the weak, while the Legion is all about power and fitness. So they rely on natural remedies like healing powder. In the show, this Legion girl specifically asks for medicine, not a Stimpak.
We need medicine.
I think it's likely this ends up being a problem when they arrive back at camp. In the next episode, we'll start to see some of those cultural differences acted upon. But did you notice the sign just outside this hospital? It's Affordable Al's Discount Hospital that used to offer revolutionary treatments for new plague at low rates. The new plague swept across America in the 2050s, and the major relevance in Fallout lore is this led to the creation of the FEV virus. This eventually led to the creation of supermutants and centaurs, which might be relevant later in Season 2. The new plague getting a mention here is interesting to me. In Episode 1, they also had a small tease around a new skincare product being offered by West-Tech pre-war.
In business news, West-Tech stocks are up again, amid reports their latest biological products will revolutionize skincare.
And while these might just be fun Easter eggs, with this being a bit of new lore established, I almost wonder if they're leading to something here. In Episode 2, we see the Brotherhood of Steel take over Area 51, and this contained a ton of Easter eggs, many of these being references to the Wild Wasteland trait from Fallout New Vegas. Unlike other Fallout games, in New Vegas, Zetans, these aliens, didn't just appear in the world, and would only appear if you took the Wild Wasteland trait, which basically gives you a bunch of additional wacky or wild encounters around Fallout New Vegas. And a lot of this parallels what you could actually see in the show. In Area 51, we of course can see Zetans themselves and a bunch of their equipment that has popped up in the past games. Several different kinds of weapons that the Zetans have used could be seen in the background here, but also real historical artifacts like the Ark of the Covenant, and even the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch, which appeared in Monty Python. With Wild Wasteland, you had a few references to Indiana Jones, and it seems like they're somewhat carrying over that same idea here. But one of the biggest criticisms from Episode 2 was how dumb the Brotherhood of Steel now seems to be. These various West Coast factions just really came off like a bunch of jock bro types. And while, yeah, it does sort of fit the military theme, it's definitely different from the Brotherhood we've seen in the past. Although I think all of this is intentional. It's not a bastardization of the Brotherhood, it's meant to show a contrast. It seems like Season 2 overall is making a broader point that the West Coast Brotherhood of Steel is a lower quality compared to the East Coast version. And really, the Commonwealth Brotherhood of Steel in particular seems to be way more powerful and competent. That's why everyone's scared of them now. But that isn't necessarily shocking, as what we're seeing in the TV show is the second wind of an otherwise failed and fractured Brotherhood. On the West Coast, there was a giant NCR Brotherhood war. The Brotherhood lost a major battle at Helios 1, and then just went into hiding. The Brotherhood soldiers weren't even allowed to engage with other NCR soldiers. That's how bad things were. And that's how we find the Brotherhood on the West Coast just 15 years earlier at the time of Fallout New Vegas. But now, with an extra decade and change, in the Fallout TV show, the NCR is largely absent from Vegas, and the Brotherhood is a lot more powerful. We still don't really know what happened to the NCR, but this clearly is letting the West Coast Brotherhood of Steel have a lot more success. They always had a technological advantage, but now the manpower numbers are much closer, so the Brotherhood is finally winning, and that's what we see in the TV show. But it's not like they're winning out of talent, it really just seems like they're winning because they have better equipment. And even some of these new Brotherhood factions reflect the ongoing battles. Each location seems to have beaten out some other faction. Maximus's San Fernando Knights are located in LA and likely had to defeat the Boneyard. In past Fallout games, the Boneyard really was LA. It was bizarre how it was missing from the show, but it could make sense if these knights destroyed it and Moldaver was all that was left. This new Coronado faction would have defeated the NCR city of Dayglow that was built out of San Diego, which is right where Coronado is. The Grand Canyon was controlled by the Legion, the last we hear, so a Grand Canyon chapter of the Brotherhood would have had to have fought them and likely won, considering they now hold the Grand Canyon, with Yosemite being the only group that doesn't seem to be coming off of a major conflict in the show, and they were even shown to be the most normal. I think what we're seeing here is a failed and fractured Brotherhood just starting to rise back up. That's why they're coming off so bad. Each of these branches latched onto something, whether it be religion, technology, or something else, but overall haven't flourished due to decades of war until the San Fernando group basically walk in and take a fully ready cold fusion from the NCR and Moldaver, so now all of a sudden they're pretty powerful. And it would explain why they're also fearful of the Commonwealth Brotherhood. They're actually competent. And Episode 2 gave Liberty Prime a pretty massive power boost. This, of course, is the Commonwealth Brotherhood's giant giant robot who throws nukes of his own at his enemies, and that happens to be the exact same nuke model that was used to blow up Shady Sands. So that would mean that like 2 tosses of nukes from Liberty Prime would take out a pretty good chunk of the entire West Coast Brotherhood of Steel. But if you want an even crazier theory to come out of episode 2 and the Brotherhood, it's around Harkness. This is the new character from the Commonwealth Brotherhood, and there's a theory going on that he's 1, not actually a member of the Brotherhood, and 2, actually a synth. All of this really just stemming from his name. Harkness was the name of a synth in Rivet City in Fallout 3. Could this be the very same Harkness, even despite the fact that they look nothing alike? Well, this character and their coinciding quest were very notable in Fallout 3, as it was actually all a tease for Fallout 4. The replicated man quest in Fallout 3 kind of served as a big teaser for some of the major factions and events in Fallout 4. Harkness himself was a synth from the Commonwealth that escaped the Institute's Synth Retention Bureau. His job was to capture other escaped synths, but eventually he became sentient and started to feel bad about what he was doing. So then he gets some help from the Railroad in the Commonwealth and eventually flees to Rivet City because it's only here that somebody has the ability to give him a full makeover. In order to flee from the Institute, he needs his memory, face, and persona completely wiped and changed. And now you can suddenly see how this all ties into Season 2. What if this is the exact same Harkness, just reset once again with another new persona, face, and ideology? But the theory goes even further than that because some suspect he could even be an Institute agent. Harkness isn't actually from the Commonwealth Brotherhood, but instead just reprogrammed to act like he is, just like Harkness in Fallout 3 was. Because his real job is to infiltrate the West Coast Brotherhood of Steel because they just got cold fusion, something the Institute would be very interested in. That is also why everyone here is so surprised to see the Commonwealth Brotherhood member arrive. They had no idea because he's not actually from the Commonwealth Brotherhood. In episode 2, we see Norm have an almost eureka moment that he could just lie using the contacts he garnered from Bud to convince all of these Vault Tech managers to just work for him. This very closely resembles passing a speech check in-game, and even some of the dialogue is pretty outlandish, just like when you get a crazy speech check pass. Although, as much as everyone is rooting for Norm here, I'm not sure how ethical he's going to be with this newfound power. Even just in his escape from the vault, he is quite literally climbing the corporate ladder. The very thing all of these people are obsessed with, and Norm is actually doing it here. And this really marks a major growth moment from Norm, and particularly where we find him in Season 1. In Season 1, Norm's shown to be an intelligent coward. He was the only one to realize the Raiders were secretly in the vault. It's what leads him to eventually investigate Vault 32 and start uncovering some of the layers of this secret. He was always perceptive, but he was scared. He's too afraid to leave the vault with Lucy as she exits, so he stays here and just keeps growing as a result. We find out how he was basically too smart for all of the jobs available and lacked enthusiasm at each of them, and he goes on to instead find new side quests for himself. But Norm wasn't the good guy. When thinking of solutions for their Raider problem, Norm was the very first one to suggest killing them, because I think what we're actually seeing is Norm was an ideal example of what Bud's Buds is all about. The program and the triple vault system with Vault 31, 32, and 33 was all intended to create super managers that would rule the post-war world. Vault 31 had all of the Vault Tech managers that would then oversee the people in Vault 32 and 33 who had many ideal traits. That's why they were breeding vaults around Vault Tech. Norm has the ideal traits of a super manager and quite literally just climbed the corporate ladder to escape the vault, something he was too scared to do prior. And now he even has a small army willing to do his bidding. But then transitioning to the part of the video that will be a bit more spoilery, for whatever reason, in quite a few of the TV spots or other marketing material for Season 2 of the show, certain details are being revealed that do just kind of confirm things. So if you're just watching ads around Fallout Season 2, you'll have seen some of the stuff. I'm going to connect the dots though. But if you haven't seen some of this stuff and want to be surprised when it pops up in the show, maybe skip this part of the video. But starting off with Maximus, one of the posters for Season 2 makes it pretty clear that Maximus ends up leaving the Brotherhood of Steel with cold fusion. And from some of the trailers, we even know he's fleeing with Thaddeus. This Season 2 poster makes it clear that Maximus subtly takes cold fusion at some point, and it's quite likely this is what ends up triggering the Civil War in the first place. I can imagine all of these competing factions will react to someone stealing this positively, and a major aspect of this may be Thaddeus's evolving condition. This iconic shot of the airships fighting was Maximus running with someone in power armor, but from some of the other released media images we've seen, this is actually Thaddeus, who is now even more mutated. And from past trailers, we know Thaddeus Thaddeus and Maximus will be traveling together for at least a little while, and that's a problem. Earlier in the season, we've seen that the Brotherhood doesn't like mutants. It seems like Thaddeus is turning into a centaur, which is going to be a big problem with these Brotherhood factions. So perhaps Thaddeus's interactions with Maximus somehow leads him down this new path. At this moment, you could imagine that they're watching the Brotherhood they grew up in, that they really became adults in, literally falling out of the sky around them, while Maximus probably has the thing they all want in his pocket. There's a lot of interesting paths forward from this, the most obvious option being a rebuilding of Shady Sands or Maximus returning to the NCR. Maybe some of those quotes from his father at the start of episode 2 were actually foreshadowing where Maximus would end up. But either way, it definitely seems like Brotherhood ideology will be a large part of the second half of season 2. But one of the other major points of speculation is this Revenge of Brutus poster. It appears in the background in one scene in episode 1, but also very prominently in the credits of episode 2. Revenge of Brutus is a pre-war Cooper Howard movie, but also seems to be a reference to the real-life events around the Revenge of Brutus and killing of Julius Caesar. Brutus and his co-conspirators are the ones who assassinated Julius Caesar. You know, the whole et tu, Brute thing? This was because they viewed Caesar as a threat to the Roman Republic, but many disagreed in the end. So Rome entered into a civil war following this assassination. In the end, Brutus loses. He's defeated by Mark Antony and Octavian at the Second Battle of Philippi, and then Rome enters into the era of emperors as Mark Antony takes over. And either this is a crazy coincidence or the writers are getting super deep here because this all ties into Fallout lore. The Second Battle of Philippi happens on October 23rd, 42 BC. That's exactly 2,119 years prior to the day the bombs dropped in Fallout, which is on October 23rd, 2077 AD. So yeah, maybe that's all just a coincidence, but I think there might be something more going on here. To me, the Revenge of Brutus doesn't really make much sense here. It's not like Brutus actually got revenge. He just killed Caesar in a surprise attack over fears over what Caesar was doing and where he was leading Rome. But Mark Antony and Octavian absolutely did get revenge on Brutus for Caesar. Octavian was Caesar's son, so I'm almost wondering if this is the showrunners actually being quite coy. I think they're laying out the full Legion plotline for season 2. We've seen from TV spots that there does appear to be a new Caesar of the Legion, but this isn't the same one from Fallout New Vegas, at least presumably. In Fallout New Vegas, Caesar, aka Edward Sallow, is the person to found the Legion, but he has notable features that aren't present here. His displacer glove that he always wears is absent, and spoilers, but in Fallout New Vegas, he has cancer and dies in all but one specific outcome in that game. Typically, the Praetorian Guard and Caesar himself were melee only. You've probably seen some of the backlash around the guns being present here. Barring major retcons, I think what's more likely is this is just a successor Caesar and Edward Sallow is dead, likely dead from cancer, because it doesn't seem like this guy remains Caesar for long. This shot is a pretty big spoiler now. It was our first look at Macaulay Culkin from one of the first season 2 trailers. But notably, he's wearing a crown, the same crown this guy is wearing in the episode 3 teaser. So it seems pretty clear that Macaulay Culkin's character kills Caesar and just takes over. Hence the whole Revenge of Brutus poster, or at least that's the coy part. My theory is things go even further and perhaps the ghoul comes back around in the end to kill the Culkin Caesar, as that is the actual revenge being enacted. Perhaps this will somehow tie into the ghoul's family, or maybe it's just around rescuing Lucy. But either way, those are my theories and some of the major details I noticed in Season 2, Episode 2 of Fallout. This video was out a bit later due to Christmas, but get subscribed for more. I'll be making videos like this every single week of Season 2, and a bit more. I do have mod and other videos coming, but I also plan to start live streaming a playthrough of the Fallout New Vegas DLC in January. I've actually never played the New Vegas DLC. I didn't have enough money when I was a child and didn't have enough time while I was an adult. But either way, thanks for watching and get subscribed if any of that content interests you.